So guys, we've reached the end. The Ultimate Fighter Season 30, the final reality show episode on ESPN Plus is dropped. And this is the last episode of Talkin TUF. Well, for now. I'll probably do a special episode or something after the finale, or we'll just cover it in depth on the Hurt Handbook pod. But yeah, this is the final episode of the series for now, and I can't believe it. You know, we made it here. It's been a long 12 weeks, but it's been a fun 12 weeks. And in this final episode, we have the last of the semifinal fights between Juliana Miller of Team Pena versus Katylin Neal of Team Nunes. And the winner of that will face Brogan Walker in the finale on August 6th. And I honestly, I'll get into my thoughts just on the season as a whole, but I'm so excited for the finale. I mean, besides the winner of this facing Brogan Walker, we got Zach Pauga versus Muhammad Usman in the heavyweight finale. I just can't wait for that fight. But yeah, this final episode, it was a little bit bittersweet. I mean, because it's been a long run. Doing these videos has been fun, but it's a grind, and yeah, it's sucks that it's ending, though. I mean, I've been enjoying watching this season every week. TUF 30 has been fun. But in this final episode before the last fight, I mean, there were a couple cool things that happened. Both teams got to go out for a night in Las Vegas with, obviously each other, not unchaperoned. But that's happened in the past in TUF and has never gone well. So, yeah, they did some team bonding activities together. Team Pena went to a Jabberwocky show. That was kind of cool. Seemed like a lot of the fighters appreciated how, similar, I guess, dancing would be to martial arts, just because footwork and all that stuff matters. And, yeah, I mean, I'm not much of a dancer, so I'm not going to get more into that one. But Amanda Nunes, she took her team to a Brazilian grill. That looked kind of cool. Food looked pretty good. But, yeah, it seemed like both teams enjoyed it. And, I guess throughout the season there's a big connection that's formed. And it was nice to see them get a night on the town after giving us just a great season of fights. And besides that, though, like I said, there wasn't much else. We're really going to be focusing on the fight in this one. I have a lot to talk about for this. And just besides that, though, I've mentioned the flashbacks that they do in the middle of the episode sometimes, and I always like those because they're like a little throwback to the old UFC. It's not really similar to how it was back then, but I still love it. And for this TUF flashback, I love that they saved this for the final episode, but they showed off Juliana Pena's awesome run through TUF. She was on the Team Rousey versus Team Tate season. She was on Misha's team, and she just was a marauder. She went through the show no problem. And God, man, it's amazing how her career has progressed from TUF. I remember a few years ago when she was calling out Amanda Nunes, and everybody wasn't even taking it seriously. Even a year ago, nobody was really taking it seriously. I mean, to be fair, I'm gonna sound like an idiot here, but it's just. I didn't think that she was going to win that first fight. I will say that. But if you look at the receipts on Instagram, I did say that of all the matchups that Amanda has had in the past few years, Juliana presents the toughest test she's faced in a very long time. And if there's anybody who's going to be able to beat Amanda Nunes, it would be her. And I didn't say that she was going to win, so I don't want to take credit for that by any stretch. I like everyone else, thought that Amanda was going to win. But this fight, this is the rematch. I can't wait for it, but we'll get a little bit more into that after we get into the fight. So this fight breakdown isn't really going to be a crazy, hyper analytic thing about both fighters. I mainly want to focus on the winner of this fight just because she looked outstanding throughout the whole fight. I was impressed by everything from the game plan to the execution of that game plan. Juliana Miller, she's going to the finale and facing Brogan Walker, but let's talk about the fight and find out why. So, going into the fight, Juliana Miller and Juliana Pena, they seemed pretty certain of what Katylin Neal's game plan was going to be, and they did happen to get it right on the money. Katylin Neal, she's a very good striker and she's good in the clinch, but she's a point fighter, which is pretty much the exact opposite of what Juliana Miller is trying to do in there. And Miller's game plan from the start was just to get in her face, constantly pressure, and just wear her down over time and eventually finish her. And that's pretty much what happened to a T. And right off the bat, she was right in Caitlin Neal's face in round one. And, starting off on the feet, Juliana, it's weird. Like, her striking is interesting because she does have a really good jab and she's got great, 1-2s. So she's good at, landing combinations. But since she pressures so much sometimes she'll leave her head on the center line, which leads to her getting hit. But in this fight, it didn't really matter that much because it did not take long for Juliana to get her on the ground. And just some of the ways that she was doing it was just fantastic. Like the lateral drops that she was landing on Caitlin Neal was just absolutely incredible. She landed a few of them, and a couple of them really landed her into advantageous positions. There was the one time she got into full mount because of it. There was another couple where she was on the back because of it. She was going for chokes and she was landing a lot of ground and pound. Just round one was all Juliana Miller, and her grappling just looked absolutely outstanding. And like I said, just those lateral drop takedowns are really just nice. I loved watching those because it seemed like Caitlin Neal was satisfied with being up against the cage, even though Juliana had her back, and just watching her drop and get into those dominant positions, you could tell that her jiu-jitsu is just outstanding. And it's definitely going to pose a lot of problems for Brogan in the finale. But going into round two, same thing as round one, but a lot quicker because when Juliana got her down this time, she was in mount and she was landing a lot of elbows, just bad grounded pound, and it caused Neal to buck and scramble out of position, and that's what ended the fight for Caitlin Neal because she ended up scrambling right into a nasty Juliana Miller armbar. Her arm was facing she was bending it in a very bad position. I'll just say that. You guys can watch the episode and see it for yourselves. If I can find a picture, I'll put it in here. But either way, definitely watch this final episode because Juliana Miller, in my opinion, is the most exciting fighter throughout this season. Male or female, doesn't make a difference. Just because her style just doesn't breed boring fights. She's going to come at you. She wants to fight, and she's coming for the finish at all times. And in this one, the finish was just brutal. And with that, she's just punching her ticket to the finale, and I just cannot wait for the finale. So let's talk a bit about those two fights. So as this season of Talkin TUF comes to an end, let's talk a little bit about the final fights of the season that will be happening on August 6th on UFC on ESPN 40, which is also UFC Fight Night. Thiago Santos versus Jamal Hill, which is a main event that I can't wait for. But now we also have the TUF finale to look forward to. Usually I feel like the way they do it is the finale comes before the coaches' fights, but in this case it's not. UFC 277, as I've said before, is July 30th, and that's when Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena will be facing off in their rematch. And then the week after is when that fight night will be, which is when we'll get Juliana Miller versus Brogan Walker and Zach Pauga versus Muhammad Usman. But before we get into all those fights, just a season recap, if you will. I wrote down just a few moments throughout the season that I really just enjoyed. But before that, 3 out of the 4 fighters who made the finale were on Team Pena. So I guess that means Team Pena is technically right now winning the show, but obviously it could be 50-50 if Brogan Walker wins against Juliana Miller because, the heavyweight fight is Team Pena versus Team Pena. So in that case, a Team Pena fighter is going to win no matter what. But in the girls' fight, we definitely, it's still 50-50. But Team Pena, just like I said, throughout the whole season, they just seemed a lot closer than Team Nunes was. I don't know if that's just the way that they cut it up on the show, but either way, it just seemed like they had such a great team dynamic there, and it led to a lot of success in these fights in the house. And, I guess I'll get into the heavyweight one first, even though both of these fights have been driving me crazy because I feel like there's so many different ways that they could go, which, as I've said with Tiz before on the main pod, that just makes for the best fights when you really just don't know what's going to happen. But I'm going to give my predictions, so take it with a grain of salt. Zach Pauga versus Muhammad Usman. Now, I think that Zach Pauga's got this one. And that's not to say that Muhammad Usman has no chance. There's definitely things that he does that could cause Zach Pauga problems. He's got major power in his punches, and he is pretty good on the ground. But I've said this like 1,000 times about Zach Pauga. If he's training with Curtis Blades, I'm sorry, he's probably not getting taken down by anybody in the house that easily. And that includes Muhammad Usman. So with that, it leads me to think that this fight is mostly going to be on the feet, which leads me to believe that Zach Pauga has a major advantage because his striking is just so technical and it's very precise. He's accurate. Like, he doesn't really like miss a lot when he's throwing. He as Israel Adesanya says, he aims and fires. So I just think that Muhammad Usman's going to be there to, like, he's there to be hit because Usman's, like, striking is a lot of power punches, and when he throws those overhands, he leads with his head a lot, and he leaves it, like, right on the center line, and that makes me think that Zach Pauga is going to be able to land, like, a knee up the middle, uppercuts, counter hooks, and, like, there's just a lot of openings on the feet that I feel like Zach Pauga is going to be able to exploit, and Muhammad Usman, like, he's lost fights before in higher level competition. I mean, his losses in the PFL, that was like not a while back, but long enough. I just still think that Zach Pauga is one of the best fighters on the show. And I think that, honestly, I really think that he has like a nice future with the UFC. And I think that this fight versus Muhammad Usman is going to be the start of something special. And speaking of just special talents, Juliana Miller versus Brogan Walker, I do think that Juliana Miller is going to get this one done. I'm not as sure about it just because, like I said, Juliana does get hit sometimes, and Brogan is good with her counter hooks and her 1-2s. And just her boxing in general, like, she's good at managing range, so it makes me say to myself, Juliana's going to have a bit more of a problem maybe closing the distance, but I still think she's going to be able to. I think the mentality is what's different about this one. I think Brogan Walker, while she's very passionate, I think that her fight style is similar to like how Katylin Neal's fight style is in the sense that she's more trying to like pick you apart from range rather than come right at you and finish you. And Juliana Miller, the thing with her is like she doesn't give you a chance to breathe. She's constantly in your face. She has the cardio to go all three. And Brogan Walker, it was weird. She was talking on the finale like about how she thinks that her striking is a lot more refined than Juliana Miller. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I mean, it definitely is like more refined, but not by a lot. I think that Juliana Miller is going to cause Brogan a lot of problems by getting right in her face. I think that the accurate, point fighting style isn't the way to go against Juliana Miller. I think the only way you can really beat someone like her is if you take it into those deep waters with her and you can defend what she has to offer. Because alongside, like, with that relentless pressure on the feet, she has amazing jiu-jitsu, as we saw in both of her fights in the house. And I just think that she has all the tools to beat Brogan Walker. I think that Juliana Miller and Zach Pauga are going to take it home for Team Pena, and Team Pena is going to win the show. And I just think that Zach Pauga and Juliana Miller are just two awesome fighters. And Dana White likes Juliana Miller, obviously judging by that conversation that they had after her first fight. That was one of my favorite moments of the whole season. Honestly, her run through the house as well as Zach Pauga's runs through the house were just two of my favorite parts of the whole season. I grew to enjoy watching them throughout, and their personalities are really likable. So, and plus, I'm not being biased. I would think what I think about these fights even if they didn't follow our Instagram, but they do follow the Instagram, so that gives them a few brownie points with me at least. But besides their runs through the show, like there were a few cool moments throughout the season. Like early on, I remember Muhammad Usman and Mitchell Sipes beef. I think that was like the second episode. That was really fun to watch. I love Mitchell Sipe. I hope we somehow get to see more of him in the future, even though he lost first round. Hannah Guy's ambulance house was quite an interesting story to hear for the first time. And along with that, Bobby Maximus, his run, even though he lost in the first round to Eduardo Perez, who was another guy on the show who I had high hopes for. But I think we'll still be seeing him at some point in the UFC. I just have a feeling, because even Dana, he seemed to be impressed by his performance even in the loss against Usman. And either way, I think that fight was debatable as it is. But there's just so many great stories on this one. And I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but Bobby Maximus, that story was truly incredible too. Just how he went from, I guess it would be I don't even know if you want to call it a journeyman because he wasn't really around that long in the UFC. And it was so long ago at this point, like, I don't even really want to call it that. But he fought in the UFC, obviously, in the 2000s. Comes all the way back, 2022. I think it was like he hadn't had a fight since 2009. And he didn't look too bad, like, at the beginning of the fight against Eduardo Perez. I remember that. So just that story along with all the other cool things that happened throughout the season, it really was just a fun one. I enjoyed really almost every episode of it. The coach's challenge was cool. I like the axe throwing. Juliana Pena, you'll probably never see her doing that again. Amanda Nunes, she did a lot better in that coach's challenge. But yeah, I mean, I like this fight, this season of fights. I don't know if I liked it as much as last season's fights, because last season really just, I feel like every episode was either a war or a crazy finish. This episode did have some technical chess matches that maybe weren't the most exciting, but probably taught you a lot about whoever was fighting. But I think the storylines themselves, and I think the fighters in terms of their skill sets, I think that this season was probably a lot better. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more people from TUF 30 in the UFC. It seems like, I even talked about this like in one of the Hurt Handbook pods with Tiz, but it seems like with TUF 29, only a few of them have really been able to really gain some steam in the UFC, and even the ones who have are losing lately, like Trayshawn Gore and Ricky Tercios, but they still have a lot of time to turn it around. But TUF 30, I see so many people who are capable of being like high-level fighters in the UFC. I mean, like I've said already, like with Juliana Miller and Zach Pauga, I think that they have the potential to go really far. Especially Zach Pauga. Out of anybody in the show, I really think that Zach Pauga has like the best chance of being champion out of all of them. But besides those two, even like people who have lost before the finale, like I said, I think Eduardo Perez has a lot of potential in the UFC. Brogan Walker, even if she loses to Juliana Miller, I think will be a good addition to the UFC roster. Muhammad Usman, I'm still not sold on, but I think he has a lot of potential just due to his athleticism, so I wouldn't mind seeing him in the UFC either. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much to gain from watching this season. I think that we'll be seeing a lot of these people in the UFC. I would like to see some of the people who had some weight struggles, like Chantel Coates. I would like to see her get a shot in the UFC at some point, because that wasn't her fault. When, I don't know if you guys remember that, but she, I think she had like a miscarriage and COVID, and that just messed with her whole like weight cutting in general, and she just came to the show unhealthy, overweight, but it wasn't really her fault. It was just bad health. So I hope that she gets a shot to reverse the opinions of what like people are probably thinking of her, because I don't think it was a lack of discipline. I really don't. I think it was just bad luck, you know what I mean? So I feel like she deserves at least one shot. And even Laura Gallardo, she was the short notice, I guess, contestant, if you will, on the show. She won her first fight and then lost her second fight, but I do think it did have a lot to do with her not being a natural 125er. Laura Gallardo is a 115er for sure, so I would love to see her get a shot in the UFC at that weight class instead of at 125. But man, I enjoyed watching this season so much. I enjoyed making these videos, even though some of them I was more tired than I was for others. This whole season was a fun ride, and I'm glad I got to sit here and rant about The Ultimate Fighter to you guys, because hopefully a couple of you guys enjoyed it just as much as I did. And yeah, and with that, it's sad. It's coming to an end, man. The Ultimate Fighter Season 30, it's almost wrapped up. August 6th is when we will really get all the closure, and I will be back with another special edition of Talkin' Tough most likely after that. So I'll see you guys then.